Flow Studio. It's Mark and John here at Maker Flow. We're on episode number two, number dos. And this one is about Etsy, Shopify, Amazon, and other marketplaces that we are going to discuss today. The pros, the cons, the good, the bad, and try to help you, give you an idea of what direction you should go with your customization business.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. We didn't get canceled yet.
No, we're on the second one.
It should be a milestone that we made it to the second one.
If you wear your sandals, they might cancel us.
Well, I don't know. We might get more viewership. I'll also get a pedicure.
I do like the coach shoes.
Yeah,
those are good.
Yeah. Maybe I'll change it up next time. Yeah.
I'm changing it up every time.
There we go.
So.
Yeah, you do have a nice kicks collection.
I do. That is my
you gotta bring them
one
out.
of my guilty pleasures.
For sure. Well, talking about kicks. Let's start with a fun story.
Sure.
I'm mixing it up here a little bit.
Okay.
So, kicks used to be a big thing on eBay, and since this whole thing is about marketplaces, let's start talking a little bit about the first marketplace that you ever sold on and how old you were.
It was eBay.
eBay.
Well, eBay started in like 1995, I think.
Really?
And I got on eBay when I was 13. Wow. And what happened was I had worn these basketball shoes all season long. And they were like these Nike shoes, and they were super popular, right? I wore them all season. And after the season, I was done wearing them. I cleaned them up and everything, and I'm like, I think I can get some money out of these. And I'm like, Dad, can I get like your credit card? I got to make this eBay account. I need your bank account. Like I was too young to even get on eBay. And so my dad helps me out. I get an eBay account going, and I put these Nike shoes up for sale. And I sold them for $50 more than what I even paid for them brand new in the store. Wow. I was like, whoa. That's pretty cool, and that's kind of how my e-commerce journey had started.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And how old were you? Did you say?
I was 13.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I was doing at 13, but it was definitely not entrepreneurship. Yeah, and not online on a marketplace.
Like at eBay, you had to pay per picture that you put up there. It's like, oh, you want to put 5 pictures on there? It's like a quarter per picture.
No way.
It was like that rudimentary.
That is so archaic.
I don't think they had any videos or anything like that. But the coolest thing was back then was anybody could be anybody online, like behind the computer selling stuff. Nobody knew I was a little 13-year-old kid who just wore these sneakers, the whole basketball season.
Yeah.
And they didn't know who they were buying from. And I feel like that has really changed, bringing it, 25 years later into today's world, where you actually want to show your face and you don't want to be just a nameless brand, behind the computer.
Yeah, and I think that let's take that and lead into pain points. So I think that's a great segue, because you're absolutely right. Back then, if you had known it was a 13-year-old, maybe you wouldn't have made that purchase. But today, it's almost okay. Like if you're out there and you're showing people, hey, I'm hustling, I'm doing this, and you really put yourself out there, kind of like we are with this podcast.
Yeah.
It goes way further than like you said, being brandless, nameless, faceless.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. So what I want to do real quick is I want to go through some pain points, right? Okay. This episode, we have talked quite a bit on how we want to do this episode, but what I really want to start off with is what we kind of run into, and the biggest thing, again, this episode is all about Etsy, Shopify, Amazon, local, other marketplaces. And there's a lot of confusion on where to sell, how to sell.
Yeah.
Why should I sell at these places? Maybe you're just starting out in this journey and you're trying to figure out like what's the best place to sell. I think there's a lot of questions that people have, and I really want to make sure that we go through these and really answer it through the episode. Yeah. So one of the first pain points I have is decision fatigue. Basically, kind of like what I was talking about. Like, what are you supposed to, like, if you're starting out today, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
What are you supposed to sell?
There's a lot of pain points with marketplaces. And by the way, any of our viewers that are watching live, be sure to ask questions in the comment box. We'll be sure to try to answer some at the end, or if you're not watching this live, go ahead and put the comment on the channel, and we'll try to get back to you as well on that. But there's so many marketplaces to choose from, and it's overwhelming. It's really daunting to like decide which one do you want to go with.
Yeah.
And there's like some with little to no fees, if you want to DIY it, and some to like 15, 20, 25% fees on the top line. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And so it really comes down to like really understanding your niche and in your target market, and just getting started somewhere. is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and one thing you didn't even touch on that is websites.
Yeah.
Marketplace is only half the game. Are you supposed to have a website or not? So we'll kind of get into that. I think going with that, burnout from managing multiple channels. We kind of talked about that. It gets very overwhelming. Platform fees you touched on. Fear of losing control. I think this is a very interesting one. I think this is something you and I have experienced maybe in the last 5 years, where we feel like we don't have an option but to be on a marketplace, right? But then at the same time, they have rules and regulations, and you cans and can'ts and do's and don'ts, and you sort of lose your brand, your margins, and so much of what you've built to them. Yeah. So, I'd love to. We might get into that, and
well, let's touch on that. I mean, the one that comes to mind for me is Etsy.
Yeah,
and you really get suckered into having to play the game of the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
If they want what they want, you got to succumb to that, because
correct,
they're not going to show your listings if you don't. So for example, Etsy, what's the free shipping threshold? $35. You have to offer customers free shipping at $35 for Etsy to consider your listing into showing up into the search results.
Well, and what you mean by that is, if you want to be favored on Etsy, if you play by the rules, your listing is more likely to be presented by Etsy to other shoppers. So that doesn't mean that. So you could put free shipping at $100, but Etsy, exactly. Yeah. Etsy is going to be like, well, screw you.
I'll put you down here at the bottom on the 5th page, and no one's going to see you.
Exactly. So
and there's other things too. They have the star seller rating, right? So they actually look at how fast you're replying to messages. They look at how fast you're processing orders out the door, and then they look at your reviews and ratings.
That's right.
And if you're not hitting like extremely high remarks on all three of those, then you don't get star seller rating.
That's right.
If you do get star seller rating, then your listings get optimized, and they show you higher in the search results.
Yeah, and when we started on Etsy, that was not a thing. But I think as the battle gets more fierce with more marketplaces, right, you don't have a choice but to put some restraints, right? You gotta kind of herd the sheep, so to speak. You got to put some rules and regulations, and Etsy is trying to do that, and that's kind of what happens.
Yeah. Well, let's not even get into the ads on Etsy. It's like a yes or no decision. You can't even really decide.
There's no control. Yeah.
There's very little control.
Yeah. You get an order, and the ad cost was $20, and the order total is $25, and you don't make any money sometimes. And but anyways, let's not get carried away. I'm still going down pain points. Okay. There's so many, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's marketplaces. So just real quick, I'm gonna touch on a little bit on websites. So I know that in our industry, a lot of folks say Shopify, right? And Shopify has sort of become the Kleenex of tissue paper, right? When you just say Kleenex, you're just looking for any tissue paper, right? When you say Shopify, you're talking about a website. And so when you hear like Shopify, Wix,
Squarespace,
yep.
Was it WooCommerce?
WooCommerce, BigCommerce. Yeah. There's so many platforms now where you can build your website. Kind of like when you go to, an Etsy or Amazon as a marketplace, the other ones are basically to build your websites. And one of the biggest things is traffic. I think I see so much nowadays that, I built a website, but where's the traffic, right? And that's such a big question. And the next thing it leads into is, let me do SEO to get traffic.
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge misconception on, hey, if I do my SEO right, I'm just going to get hundreds of thousands of views, and that's going to convert into sales, and I can just live just with SEO.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really work like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, do we really have to bust that myth? Having a Shopify website is not going to bring you traffic. Correct, right?
Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah, but don't go. Well, let's get into that later. I don't want you to get into it.
You can't just get a domain on GoDaddy, open up a Shopify, and expect people to start coming in.
Yeah. It doesn't work like that. You're absolutely 100% correct. Well, it doesn't work like that today, especially. Maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago it was a little bit different. Yeah. But as far as today goes, it does not work like that. It's almost like it's a minimum requirement if you're a business that you at least have to have a website. And again, we'll get into that. Yeah. Inconsistent sales from in-person local selling. We'll get into that a little bit. And I think this last one really, clearly we started this podcast and we're all over the place. And I knew this was going to happen. And we're going to try to wrangle this all in, right? But feeling like you have to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And this conversation is kind of leading that way. It's just everywhere. Like, it's like, okay, marketplace, okay, Amazon, Etsy, website. Like, do you have to be on Facebook Marketplace? Do you have to be on Instagram? Do you have to be on TikTok Shop? Yeah. We can sit here probably for 15 minutes and name all the places where you can possibly sell. And it's like, how do you make the decision? Where do you put your resources?
Yeah. You can do it all, but it's going to require a team, maybe some team members, a virtual assistant. It's going to require more than just yourself, because you got to consider, if you're on all these marketplaces, your own channel, all these social medias, just think about all the inboxes you have to attend to on a daily basis to get back to every one of your customers.
Absolutely. I think it just generates so much stress and I think a lot of fear, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But I think toward the goal for this episode is we want to get to the end and kind of have a couple of game plans. Like if you're just starting out, I think we can give some advice on what you should do. Or let's say if you're in the game, on what you can do to keep growing and scaling. And I really want, anyone that's listening right now during the live or later on to be able to kind of, have some actionable items. And I'm hoping to give that to everyone that's on here.
Yeah.
So cool. So let's get started. Let's get into it.
Okay.
I was trying to come up with a very interesting stat to start this off with. And when I found this stat, I was incredibly surprised. I was incredibly shocked. And I think when you hear this stat, you will get a lot of the answers to questions that you might have. So I'm going to read this very slow because it gets a little confusing, but I'm going to read it really slow, okay?
Okay.
So in U.S. e-commerce, so just e-commerce, just online sales.
In the U.S.
In U.S. e-commerce, Amazon alone captures nearly 38% of total sales volume. So I want you to really think about that. In U.S. e-commerce, so everything in the United States sold online, all the business that's being done online, e-commerce, 38% of total sales volume is dominated by Amazon.
Wow.
Think about that. That's
incredible.
That's crazy.
All online transactions, online, on marketplaces, everything, Amazon has 38%.
Yes.
Well, some of these brands, they have their whole business on Amazon. They get more business on Amazon than they do even on their own D2C website. It's kind of like these restaurants nowadays. They probably get more business on Uber Eats and Grubhub than they do just walk-in traffic.
Absolutely. And I wonder how much of that is even shifted away from websites to marketplaces.
Yeah.
Right? But there's more to this. So marketplaces collectively command roughly about 50% of total e-commerce. Okay. So what that means is that, let's say if there's $100, $50 of that is being done on marketplaces.
Okay.
But from that 50%, 38% of that 50% is dominated by Amazon.
So that just tells me you got to have a little bit of your business sprinkled in a little bit of everywhere. You got to be on the marketplaces. You got to dabble with Amazon to see if that's worth it for you. And then you got to have your own website as well.
Correct. Because after the marketplaces, 50% of the other side of the business, right? 50% is dominated by marketplaces. The other 50% is basically your direct-to-consumer websites, which are like Shopify, which is like Wix, WooCommerce and things like that. And the business is done on the other side. But that's incredible, because if one website will dominate that much traffic, imagine how many millions of websites there are that are trying to fight for that other 50%.
Yeah.
Right? That is what's absolutely mind-boggling, is what we're actually fighting for. So I think that's an incredible stat, and I think a lot of my view on marketplaces kind of changed after listening to that stat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. So the first thing I'd like to start off with is, I think for a while, in the last, 5 years, the biggest question that I've seen is Etsy versus Shopify. Yeah. Which one should we have? And I would like to kind of go through this and really end up with an answer with that one. So you are, between the two of us, as we manage our business, you are the person that handles websites. You're the person that's on the marketplaces. You're the one that really manages the teams, and you're the one that has, when we didn't have anything, you were the one that made the website, did the marketplaces yourself. I don't mess with that, right? Because I know you're the best at it. So let's talk Etsy. Yeah. Let's start with Etsy, and let's talk a little bit about, in the last 10 years, starting from Etsy and today, what it's all about. What do you think about Etsy? How it was, where it's going? Lay it out for us.
Yeah, with Etsy, I think it started in 2005 or something. I think we had the shoe company. We got on Etsy in 2011.
It was like 2000,
Yeah, so
2009
Etsy was like
or
6
so.
or 7 years old, and
Mhm.
we were on there. And really, you fast forward till today, Etsy really hasn't changed all that much. Like, what have they really done to, revolutionize the e-commerce marketplaces? Not a whole lot, but they do have their niche in personalized businesses, and people go onto Etsy to support small businesses and makers, find unique things is the thing in the niche with Etsy. And I just hope that they get with the times with AI and agentic stuff, and don't fall behind, because Amazon is going to be doing all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely. I see it the same way. I don't think Etsy's changed much. I mean, they still have only 2 variants, right?
Oh, on their listings, yeah, it's either A or B, and then you have to, like, if you have more than 2 variants, you have to try to smash them all together. That's always a mess.
Yeah, and I think Amazon Handmade on their side has kind of solved that problem, where you can have, I don't know, an insane amount of variants.
Yeah.
There's no way to do mock-ups. The way you give, I mean, everything is still rudimentary, and it's like it used to be, which might be why so many people return, because it hasn't changed. But at some point, you have to make some changes.
But Etsy is bringing in the eyeballs. Now, if we look at Shopify is not bringing in the eyeballs. Etsy is like having a store in the mall. Like, you're getting the traffic.
Correct.
Without having to really do much of anything.
Correct.
In Shopify, you're getting a warehouse down the alley and no one knows you're there.
And you have to bring the people to the warehouse.
You got to bring the people in.
That's an incredible. I like that metaphor a lot. So basically, so Etsy is basically like, if you're starting out, it's almost like, okay, go on Etsy, but they're going to be basically, if you go to a mall, there's going to be a higher fee to be in the mall, and like I'm assuming with Etsy, there are higher fees to be on Etsy.
Etsy's actually, their fee's not too bad compared to all the other marketplaces. They're about 6.5% on their seller transaction fee,
Gotcha.
plus the credit card fee, which they're all going to charge anyways. But when you look at Amazon, they're about, it varies depending on the product you're selling, but about 15%.
Oh, so more than double.
Yeah.
Interesting. So basically, but Etsy still within our niche, within the personalizing niche and things like that. Would you say that Etsy, like today, if you're trying to make a decision, let's say if you're starting from zero, would you still get on Etsy?
I think so, because the investment is very minimal. What's it cost to put a listing up and just to spend some time and get your shop up, get your listings up? It doesn't cost much it's not a big lift, so I would definitely get on Etsy. And Etsy makes it super easy to build out those listings too. It's like super step-by-step. It's a beautiful layout on the back end, and it makes it super streamlined.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it hasn't changed in a while.
So.
So you might think that it's easy, but it just hasn't changed in a while. So let me get into some fun numbers here. So I looked this up, and it states that Etsy, as far as active shoppers, which Etsy designates as somebody that's made a purchase in the last 12 months.
Okay.
So as of the first quarter of 2025, Etsy is estimating that there are about 40 to 45 million shoppers that have come on Etsy.
That are active in the last 12 months.
In the last 12 months, as of like the first quarter of 2025.
Okay.
Correct. So that's quite a few eyeballs.
That's just in the U.S.?
That's just in the U.S., correct. I think when I was looking globally, it's about 91 to 95 million.
Wow.
Yeah, so almost.
That's incredible. Double internationally?
I was shocked too. So if you open up international, if you open up your shop to international, you could get sales. But I mean, it comes with a caveat. You got to deal with like VAT and taxes and import duties and return issues, and what happens if there's a problem. Like, there's a lot of issues you're going to run into.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, having almost double the amount of eyeballs is, if you could figure it out, it's an opportunity.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. But 40 million is a pretty solid number.
How does that rank up against some of the other platforms?
Well, and I'm going to get to that. I have the number for Amazon too.
Okay.
But
you did.
Yeah. but let's just talk Etsy. So let's give some pro tips. So if you're getting on Etsy, if you let's say if you're watching this and you've been debating Etsy or Shopify, right? And you get on Etsy, what are like your top, if you're starting from scratch today, give me like your top 3 things that you would make sure that you just nail having an Etsy shop.
Definitely your photo has to be scroll stopping. If that photo and that thumbnail and that little 1 inch on your phone isn't a scroll stopper, then you're just going to get swiped right past.
Gotcha.
That is a must. It can't be muddled and just gray. It has to be bright, vibrant, easily understand what the product is in your face. It has to be scroll stopping.
So you're saying that, like, I see a lot of folks, it kind of looks like, you just took a photo and then you put it on your table and you took a photo and you put it up. You're saying that, okay, it can't, you literally have to make it like absolutely beautiful visual, a showstopper, so to speak, in fashion. And let's say if you don't have like a photography background, can you give some ideas on how you do that?
Well, there's easy ways on Amazon to get some of these supplies, the lighting and these visual boxes and stuff to help with that and everything. And then there's tons of free information online on how to shoot like Etsy photos and stuff like that. But it really comes down to lighting, having the right angles, and just having like the products and the miscellaneous items spread around that to really give it that lifestyle feel and let the customer get the idea of like, oh, that I could see that in my life.
Yeah. So let me and for someone like me, I don't know if I would do that or not, but I have a question for you because I actually don't know the answer to this. Because you manage marketplaces, have you used AI for MakerFlow on any platform for photography?
Yeah, AI is definitely helpful. As long as it looks realistic, sometimes you throw it in an AI photo room and it's like, what is that? So I think AI is definitely useful, but I'm curious what these marketplaces are going to do, and if that's going to be like frowned upon, or if now customers are going to get used to seeing that kind of AI stuff where it might work now because it's new, but come 2-3 years, people are going to have an eye for it and be like, oh, that's AI. They just took the easy route. So I think it's like a yes and a no. Like, yeah, you can maybe use it now, but down the road, you might really want to invest in that legit setup, a good camera, lighting, and get the realistic, photos.
So I'm gonna leave with that. With yes, you can start off with it, but do actively work on potentially taking realistic real photographs.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
And then the other thing I would say it goes hand in hand with photographs is video. So on Etsy, when you are hovering over the image, if you have a video on your listing, it'll start to play that video, and that is once again one of those scroll stopping tactics to get somebody to stop, pay attention to your listing, and click into it to potentially buy.
Gotcha. And okay, that I
if you don't have a video, then you're not gonna, and they're hovering over your image to think about clicking on it, it's not gonna do anything.
So it's possible that if, let's say, our competition listing has it, you could lose out to them because they're just visually presenting that listing or that product a lot better than you.
And I've even seen people just take photos, still photos, and turn that into a video or a slideshow and just use that because something's better than nothing.
So you're saying you don't have to even take a video. If you just have stills, you can maybe there's some AI thing that you could just put it in and make
a video.
Very, very interesting. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that. Okay. What are your thoughts on keywords and SEO on Etsy?
Oh yeah, you definitely, there's tools out there, like eRank and some of these tools to help you really solidify what people are searching in the search volume. But definitely, the title and the tags, you have to optimize that. The first part of that title on Etsy is of the utmost important. So if you're going after, personalized 40-ounce tumbler, for school or back to school, that needs to be in the first part of your title, and then your tags need to also represent and match that as well. Gotcha.
So it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about for Etsy is like the visual portion of your listing is extremely important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of customers on Etsy, like, they don't want to think. Like, if you give them too many options, they're just going to be confused and they're just going to move on.
Gotcha.
Like, a lot of people buy the design, not the product. We could have, someone could have the same product on Etsy, there's 10 of the same thing, but the design is what sells that product.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I sometimes go on Etsy and, you go to like that second variant and it's like, it's a novel. You just keep scrolling to find what you want. What you're saying is that maybe don't do that, or maybe test something simpler.
Well, I'm saying, like, don't make it overwhelming. If I've got 48 design options and I have 62 font options, and oh yeah, you can pick the color of the ribbon on the packaging, and there's 48 options of those. And don't forget to put that in the comment section of the box. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
This is too much. Really narrow it down from your top sellers and just smash your top sellers as far as your designs go.
Gotcha. Well, interesting. Well, to close out a little bit of the Etsy story, I've already mentioned that there's about 40 million active users as of the earliest counts. Some interesting stats here I have is from 2022 to 2023. I'm going to talk a little about active sellers. So the active sellers on Etsy from 2022 to 2023, it went from 7.4 million, 7.5 million to 8.8 million. So 2022 to 2023, it went from 7.47 million to 8.8.
I thought you said we were at 40 some million.
Well, the active sellers.
Oh, sellers.
Sellers.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, yeah. And then this was crazy. From 2023 to 2024, it went from 8.8 million, which was the highest peak at 2023, to 5.6 million in 2024.
We went down that much?
It went down that much. From its peak to its lowest, it went down. So we lost that many sellers.
Okay, well, didn't they start allowing sellers in China and direct? And I don't know where they're at with that, but I know there was a lot of that going on where factories and people in China were just opening up shops on Etsy and they were selling direct. But now I bet you with the tariffs and all that changing and the de minimis rule, that it's probably put a lot of that down to nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that and probably I think Etsy has a problem of kind of the pricing yourself to the bottom.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge problem, and I think that's kicking a lot of it's disheartening and discouraging for a lot of Etsy shops. Like it's really hard to compete when you have a sublimation tumbler selling for $15 or $20.
Yeah.
That's difficult to do, and especially with higher prices. So Etsy, it's a I think from what I'm understanding is it's a good marketplace. It has the viewership. You just have to be okay with it not being such a forward company technologically.
Yeah.
And doesn't look like it hasn't changed the last 20 years. It's probably not going to make, they're not going to be some crazy changes in the next 5-10 years. So if you're starting off, it might be a great platform for you to start out.
Well, it sounds like they're cleaning it up. I wonder if they got rid of a bunch of the POD people that they're not even hand making this stuff. They're just, reselling it through these other marketplaces and stuff.
Yeah.
I hope that all the PODs have gone away, which is why that makes sense for that decrease.
We'll find out soon enough, because I think Etsy, it's getting a run for its money from a lot of other marketplaces, which leads us to the next marketplace.
Okay.
So let's talk kind of the big kahuna in the room, which is Amazon.
Oh yeah, they sell books, right?
Yeah, they do. When Etsy started, they were still selling books.
I used to sell books on it, like school books.
You did
on
not.
Amazon. Yeah.
Oh my God, what did you not do? Well, Etsy is a very interesting.
You mean Amazon?
Amazon is a very interesting marketplace. See, clearly this is not staged. We're doing this live. But I have some stats here for us. Active shoppers.
Oh boy.
On Etsy.
This better trump
on
Etsy.
Amazon. Yeah. Well, but it's not fair, because this is total active shoppers on Amazon in the United States. Okay. And this is from investing.com. In the USA, the total active shoppers are 230 million.
Okay.
Okay.
How many people are even living in the USA?
350 to 400 million.
Okay.
Yeah, but that could be like 230 million active accounts. So you have a personal Amazon Prime, I have a personal Amazon Prime, but then we have a business Amazon Prime, right? So people could have multiple Prime accounts. And if you have a secret Prime account, don't get caught. Don't go to a Coldplay concert. You might find your secret Amazon account that you're not supposed to have. That's such a lame joke. But anyways, see, it's not on here.
That was
It's
like
not
a
on
week
here.
ago, man.
Cut that one out. But yeah, that's a lot of shoppers on Amazon.
Yeah. Well, because think about it. Etsy is handmade, personalized products. Okay, that's its own niche. You've got Amazon selling everything from scorpion spray, repellent and clothing, like all kinds of stuff. Everything.
Yeah. Well, they do have a handmade section, and I tried to look up some stats on that handmade section, but Amazon doesn't really report the stats. However, one thing I did do was I went into the handmade section, and I went to some of the listings to see if the listings had any clout. meaning that, okay, were there listings with last month's sales on it, or were there listings with reviews? And when I went on there, I was extremely shocked to find that, yeah, there are some listings for single products with 12,000, 15,000, 20,000 reviews. And I found that to be extremely intriguing, because there are some shops that, some of the top shops on Etsy that might only have 50,000 reviews total, but this is just one product, one listing.
Man.
Yeah, so if that shop is, I didn't go deep in the shops, but if that shop has 10 products and you're doing that, you could just literally have 100, 150, 200,000 reviews just like that in individual listings. So what I'm trying to get at is Amazon as a platform for people in the customization business. It might be something that you might want to look into, right?
It sounds like you can really scale your business just based on the multiple of eyeballs that are on Amazon.
Right. And by the way, this is me giving you stats based on, we're already on Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. MakerFlow is on Amazon. But I didn't know these stats. Yeah. Right. So this is incredible to me. But let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of Amazon. So we just talked about Etsy.
Yeah.
Etsy, it hasn't changed. It has the eyeballs, but it's kind of technologically lacking, and it's great if you're starting out to get on Etsy because it's easy to use. So let's put Etsy aside. Let's talk Amazon. What are your thoughts on Amazon and managing Amazon so far?
Well, I think the interface is like super complex. There's so much you have to fill in just to get a listing on Amazon. And then there's terminology you have to learn. What's like an IBAN and a UPC and this, and what's a buy box. And you go to Amazon school to learn all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's super, it'd be scary. Be like, well, this is too much for me,
Yeah.
But it could be worth it. Then the other flip side of it is like, okay, you make it worth it, and now you're getting so many orders, maybe you can't even handle it. So you could scale out of control too.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, but I feel like as we're working, on Amazon for MakerFlow, as we get deeper into it, it only gets more complex.
Yeah. And
the more rules there are, and the more barriers and the more fencing there is, you just have to keep jumping these hoops.
Yeah, I still feel like Amazon Handmade's like untapped. Like not a lot of people even heard of it. Like you said it a second ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, like Amazon Handmade,
Yeah.
Like, it's not like an Etsy. You say Etsy, everyone knows that, but Amazon Handmade is still, I feel, untapped.
Yeah, something interesting that I've been thinking about for Handmade is that it's just a matter of Amazon flipping a switch.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, could you imagine if you're looking for, if you're in the search bar, and obviously Amazon's probably ahead of everybody else as far as AI search. And if you just put, the perfect gift for my husband, or, a gift for my husband for the 40th day, I could just totally see Amazon, showing a shovel and then showing a personalized shovel. Right? And you just dominated that space that Amazon would sell a regular Prime item with a custom item.
Yeah.
For Amazon, it's selling the product, but that I could definitely see them flipping that on. And at that point, it ends up being, are you on Amazon or are you not?
Yeah.
Right? But to me, when we're on Amazon, I just feel like it's a lot. Like just managing Amazon itself, you just need almost like it feels like a full-time person.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the same thing. You've got the photos, the videos. You have A+ content, that you need to get up on your page and build out your brand page and all that. So it's definitely a lot more. But Amazon, I feel like they have the budget over Etsy to really dominate Handmade. Like you said, if they really wanted to, they could flip that switch.
Yeah.
But what did Amazon do this week? All of a sudden, they stopped spending on Google ads, on the shopping ads.
The shopping ads.
So all the marketers now are like, whoa, what's going on? Amazon just flipped the switch. Are they recalibrating? Did the Prime Day in the summer not go as well?
Do they know something we don't?
I don't know. I think they're benchmarking their ROI, and they're just like, let's turn this off to see if Google Shopping paid ads is even worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a whole another conversation for another podcast. I don't want to get too. I don't want this to get too.
But what
confusing.
I'm saying is these companies do spend money to get eyeballs to their site, which
Correct.
Shopify ain't going to do.
Yeah, when we're looking at our stats, I think Amazon is always the top 2 or 3 competitors that's competing against us in the ad space.
Yeah.
And obviously ads, affiliate, marketing, everything is just getting more expensive, and you're really eating into margins. So for Amazon, it's at scale, and so I'm sure, you might be right. They might be cutting this out for a strategic reason, or numbers reason, or what have you. So.
What I'm excited about though, when we were at Shop Talk in Vegas in March, we learned about Amazon and how this new agentic AI e-commerce experience is happening, and Amazon is going to be on the forefront of that.
Yeah.
And how you can just talk to your phone, talk to Amazon, long tail keyword searches. They're going to give you that personalized experience. And with agentic AI, basically, we're going to all have our own AI agents that know everything about us, where you live, how many kids you have, how many square feet your home is, how many toilets you have, when you need, bug spray replaced. They're going to know everything.
Yeah.
When your kids need a birthday gift, what you got them last year and what they're, trending to get this year. And they can just automate everything. And Amazon's going to be on the top of that. And so that's why I'm excited about Amazon.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody, I was telling them that Amazon has so much of your history that it'll probably end up realizing that, hey, it's Mark's birthday. And I'd be on Amazon, let's say, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna give him a barbecue set. And it's be like, hey, you got him a barbecue set 3 years ago. You probably don't want to get him that.
Amazon probably already knows I already have a barbecue set, and it's probably gonna tell you don't do that.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. It has access to your account.
You might want to think otherwise.
That would be nuts.
Based on Mark's purchase history, he already has one.
That would be so crazy if that happened.
Who knows?
That would be a little privacy issue, but. Or again, the whole Coldplay thing. The last thing you want is like, wait, what? How do you have that? It's like I think when Facebook had their ads first, and some husband like bought a ring for his wife for a proposal, and his wife ended up getting the ads because they're on the same IP address. I don't know if you've heard that story. And she's like, "Wait, you bought an engagement ring? Like, why am I getting an engagement ring ads?" And he searched engagement rings, and it was like showing up everywhere, and it blew the bubble. Well, maybe it won't go that far, but I do. When we were there, I think Amazon is definitely at the forefront. I have really not heard much from Etsy.
Yeah.
Right. But again, it's a more advanced platform. I feel like Amazon will require either a lot of your time or someone else's time, meaning that you hire somebody, whether it's a VA or an agency. And but at the same time, you cannot ignore the fact that 38% of all purchases happen on Amazon on e-commerce.
Yeah.
And you cannot ignore the fact that there are still 230 million active shoppers that Amazon can tap into at any time and start providing personalized options.
Yeah.
I mean, it maybe not today, but sure as heck can happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of exciting to me. And, if I was anyone, whether in this room or watching now or today or tomorrow, I think if you had a sort of a chart of what my goals are, you definitely need to have Amazon somewhere on there. And that's what my advice would be.
Yeah, I don't think you need to start, if you're starting a customization business, you don't need to start off on Amazon. I would probably start off on Etsy.
Correct.
But I do want to talk about in this podcast about local sales too. I think that is definitely a footprint that every business needs to have.
Yeah, we didn't rehearse this at all, but you're killing it with the transitions here. So great transition. So let's get into that. So we talked about marketplaces. And obviously there's more than 2 marketplaces, and let's leave that to the side.
I think the big one we missed that we're not really going deep in is like social media marketplaces. So your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok shopping. I think those are tremendous opportunities too. But I know we got some other things to discuss.
Yeah, and one thing I will say about those is, and maybe we can get to this later, is those are, I think, up and coming marketplaces, and they're here. And if we look at the East, like if you look in Asia and other countries, they're massive. They're growing so much. And to me, it kind of sucks because it's so successful here. I think it's going to come, it's like a latency. It's going to come a little late, but it's going to come here where now live selling is going to be a massive thing in the United States. And I think that's a massive opportunity as well. Live selling is not only happening, on obviously TikTok is the leader in that, but, I'm sure Instagram and all these other platforms will have to catch up to that. I'm sure Amazon will too, as they have a whole program of their own.
I think they tested that, doing live selling on Amazon.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think those are all massive opportunities. But the only reason we haven't put a lot of that in this is because if you're starting out, that's a lot of commitment. Just being on TikTok live alone is a full-time commitment. Yeah. And especially if you take off, like that is a full-time commitment. And I feel what a lot of folks don't know about these platforms is you get on, you hit something, you get really popular. Well, as fast as it comes on these live platforms, you can lose it as fast. Yeah. And that's the scary part. So you build all this around this platform, this live selling platform. And I think we've seen examples of this where, you build this up and boom, TikTok doesn't like something.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't like something and tomorrow you're switched off.
You say one thing or you mistakenly trademarked, showed something, boom, you're gone. Now you built your whole business on one platform and you're just wiped clean the next day. Like you definitely want to make sure you're on multiple marketplaces, not put all your eggs in one basket.
In one basket.
But they can be powerful if you do put a lot of effort into them.
Right. So with that being said, marketplaces, social places, these are all spaces that you do not own. Meaning you don't own it, I don't own it, nobody else owns it. They own themselves.
Well,
and
it comes down to first party data.
Right.
If you're on social media, you never own that data.
Correct.
You don't get necessarily the email address to retarget them.
Correct.
TikTok is keeping all that information for the most part private to themselves.
Right. So with that being said, you're headed right in the right direction. The next thing I want to talk about is websites. Yeah. So Shopify, WooCommerce, things like that. I think let's start off with the pitfalls of having your own website, but I want to get into branding and control that website gives you. So talk to me a little bit about sort of Shopify or building your own website, and what are the kind of the pros and cons. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different places to build a website, like we mentioned, Wix and Squarespace and WooCommerce and all these. But I think Shopify, if you're looking for a true e-commerce website, Shopify is the place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're just looking for like a landing page, it's more of like an informational site, then really any of them could work.
WordPress is known to be the best.
Yeah. But I love Shopify because it's easy to build. If you have a little bit of technological background, you can build it out yourself. But there's so many developers around the world that can help you easily build a website. But the thing I like the best is the apps on Shopify. So if you're struggling on a certain aspect of your website and you're not sure how to build that out, you can probably find an app for it to help you at a small fee per month. But you have to be careful about all the apps you start adding, because then your monthly bill is going to be increasing and increasing.
Yeah. And we try to watch on MakerFlow, like our website bill it's no joke. Like it's not like a $20 a month.
We're always auditing our tech stack.
Yeah.
It gets out of control. You're like, oh, I like that. That's bright and shiny and it looks cool. And you add that and there's $50 a month. You add this one, it's $200 a month. And before you know, you're like paying $1,000 a month for all these apps, and then you forget about them.
Yeah.
And then they have so many new features. You have to like really educate yourself on those apps all the time to stay in the loop to use the most out of them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the best part about building your own website, and I'll go back to when we started MakerFlow, was that you were able to just build it overnight, right? You have a lot of control. Like with Shopify or building your own website, you have control. Like nobody can come and tell you that today we have 3 variants, but we're going to take it down to 2. No, that's completely up to you. How you want to do it. You want 85 variants on the landing page? I wouldn't recommend it, but you sure as heck can probably do it. You can just find an app, or you can custom code, or you can do a lot. So it gives you a lot of control, which is fantastic, as far as the website goes. Let's talk a little bit about branding. What are your thoughts on branding? And let's talk more about, from a marketplace standpoint, having a brand and then having your own website and how that kind of works.
Yeah, so I mean, with Shopify, it's whatever you want to show. Like you said, you have full ability to customize it however you want.
Yeah.
And you don't get that opportunity on marketplaces to show off who you are. So I think what that says and what that means is that on your Shopify website, you better show your USPs and what makes you different, and prove to that buyer why they should buy from your website and not go to just a marketplace and buy from any nameless, seller on there. Yeah. So you really want to show your face, make a video. Hey, this is Mark. Welcome to my website. I'm glad you're here. If you have any questions, just click the contact us below. Looking forward to working with you. Something simple.
Yeah.
People are going to resonate with that and be like, wow, I want to do business with these people.
So you're talking like really personally branded, but then also brand your business on your website, and sort of you have the opportunity to brand it how you want versus like an Amazon store, which you can only do this and this.
Yeah.
But you can get a lot very playful and show your characteristic, and you can show a lot of that stuff on your website, and it helps that way. You had mentioned first party data. Can you get into a little bit about the meaning of first party data, third party data, and what all that means, and why is that important?
Well, so first party data is having access to the email, the name, like the address, in order to retarget that person again.
And what do you mean by retarget?
So you can retarget them in maybe potentially like Google Ads, but maybe in a more simplistic way, retargeting them in just an email campaign, and using a platform like Klaviyo to reblast an email out to them to get that customer to come back.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that opportunity if the buyer is just buying from TikTok, because you don't get the email access.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by that.
Gotcha. And what does third-party data mean?
Jeez, third-party data is
like something on third-party meaning it's like TikTok or
it's just the opposite.
Like you don't have access to it. Yeah. And so it becomes difficult for you as a brand to grab that data and use it for marketing. Yeah, because I think Etsy and these guys, if they find out that you're remarketing with that data, that they can potentially kick you off.
Yeah. So I think it's powerful to try to collect that first party data. If you are selling a lot on these marketplaces, try to find ways to get them over to either your social medias, but more importantly, your website, so you can collect that email to communicate with them again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're not showing your face on your social media and on your websites, then you're doing it wrong right then and there. You want to make sure like your profile picture on your social media, on your business pages, it's showing you and what you stand for.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. So with that being said, let's say on your website, can you talk a little bit about how traffic works? So I see it a lot with SEO, like, hey, if I do my SEO right, if I post on social media, automatically I'm going to have traffic and sales. And is that how it works today?
Yeah. So with Shopify and your own website, you have to drive that traffic there. You have to, and SEO is changing like crazy nowadays, and who knows where that's going. But Shopify it's all up to you and driving people to your website. So you can use social media to do that, to get people over to your site, and you can write blogs and articles to help get your ranking and your authority and your domain rank up. That way you get more visibility online. And I think also collaborations with other brands and local communities and partnerships and getting backlinks from other websites will help increase your authority, which means that AI, ChatGPT, Google, they're going to have more trust in your brand and your website. If you have more backlinks, you have more credibility, they're going to want to show you more often than other people.
Wow. You use so many technical terms in that few sentences you just spoke. Let's simplify it a bit. If you're just starting out with a website, right? If it was you, like, tell me a couple of things you do right away. If you're just starting out with a website.
I mean, if I was just starting out, I wouldn't even worry about selling a product on there. I would just be lead generating and capturing information. Is like a contact us form. Is, hey, input your information. Let me know what you're interested in, and I'll get back to you. Maybe you're doing B2B or wholesale, or it's just an inquiry form. And that way you're just collecting leads that you can follow up on and close the sale with. I would make it super simple if I was just getting started. And I wouldn't even worry about like all the headaches on like making a listing on Shopify and selling and keeping inventory on there and everything. I would just I would dabble with local. I would have some marketplaces, and I would have my landing page on Shopify. Between those three things, you can get going. You can get that momentum built.
Gotcha. And do you, as far as I want to touch a little bit on SEO. If you do get started that way, how do you recommend like tackling? Do you even touch SEO, or do you kind of wait for when you're ready to like add listings and other things on your website?
I think you wait. It's so complex. You got like H1 tags, you've got meta fields, you've got all this stuff, the schema, and like, what the freak is schema? Like I had to like look that up recently. I'm like, oh my God, we need to do the schema. Here we go. Shout out to Kate for doing all our schema on our website. But that's basically what the LMMs is reading. The chat GPTs, they're reading the schema to understand
structured data.
Yeah, structured data.
Yeah. With whenever it comes to websites, I always feel like it gets so technical. Yeah. It gets so technical, right? But I think I agree with you. With the website, if we were to redo it again, I would start slow because it can get overwhelming so fast.
And you got to keep up with it too.
Yeah.
So then either like you're doing it, or you got to hire a developer and hire somebody, and it's just like, oh my God, where does it end?
Yeah, and I think your advice from earlier on marketplaces, you need to have quality photos, right? Like photos is what it's all about. You want to make sure you're personally branding yourself on the website. You have the opportunity to, you should.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I agree with you on SEO. Like when it comes to SEO, don't worry about it in the beginning. I think people pull their hair out trying to figure out SEO.
It's a long play anyways. It takes time to build all that up, 6 months, 12 months.
And you have to be ready to compete with everyone that's competing at the number 1, 2, and 3 spot. I mean, our SEO strategy is so crazy. It's so time dependent, resource dependent, capital dependent. I mean, it's a lot of, it's a lot of work, So I think that's great advice. Like, start easy, start slow. Shopify is not a platform where you build a website and traffic comes, but Etsy and marketplaces are.
Lead gen.
And try to use that lead gen from marketplaces.
Then you just start with your top seller. So, okay, let me just figure this out. Let me put my top seller on my website to see if I get sales, and go from there.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just start locally too. So then once you start getting into marketplaces and Shopify, now you got to figure out logistics on shipping and shipping boxes and the tape you need and how you're going to get discounted shipping rates. So it really gets complex pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you have any advice? I mean, to me, if I was someone new, this whole podcast to me in my head sounds very complicated still.
Yeah.
So would you recommend for someone that's starting out to work with agencies or virtual assistants?
Would I recommend one or the other or both?
One or the other, or both. Yeah, I know that in our business we use both, but we're in the phase of scaling, and we kind of don't have a choice.
I would say both. Why not? It could potentially be easier than hiring like a W-2 employee and having to pay workers' comp and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And really, like, they're the expert. Like, if you're hiring an agency, they should be the expert in that industry and taking a lot of that off your plate. If you're hiring somebody yourself, then you might have to be doing the training and educating and all that yourself.
Yeah.
So I think VAs definitely can be helpful and also affordable nowadays as well too. So I don't have a lot of cons for it.
Yeah.
But just like the biggest con we've had at MakerFlow is like working with agencies and VAs is they don't truly understand the brand, or they're not truly bought into the culture, and they're just doing it to do it
to get the sale.
And that's been like our biggest issue with agencies.
Yeah, I do agree with that. It's like you work with somebody for long enough and you're like, hey, you know what we do, right?
Yeah.
Like we are trying to sell a product, but it's more than that. We just don't want to hawk stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. I think building those relationships with your agencies and VAs is important. I think a lot of people do get caught up in that. You find someone that's like, oh my God, this person's so cheap, and you start working with them. But if they don't understand your brand, what your why is, why you're doing this, if they don't build a relationship with you, then sometimes it does get difficult to have a long-term relationship.
They might be working for 20 other small businesses, you know, and they're all over the place. So they can't give you the time and attention that you deserve.
Yeah, and full disclosure, the reason I asked that question, and this is, again, I just thought of this and I asked, is because we do use a lot of agencies and we do use a lot of VAs, and each platform for us, like, whether it's Etsy, whether it's whatever platform it is managed by somebody.
Yeah.
Now, it's impossible for you to, if you were doing that, you would never be able to sleep.
Yeah. We've used agencies just to learn from them for a few months too.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like, I'm not sure how this works. Let me hire this agency for like the 3 or 6 months, really get deep with it. And then maybe I don't need them anymore. Maybe they're doing so great that I'll keep, it's worth it for the time and effort. Or maybe I can take this on myself or put it onto my own team now that we've understand it.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's something that we can definitely do. Yeah. Well, awesome. Let's move on to the next topic.
What we got?
So the next topic, we have this relates more to the website.
Okay.
So I want to dig a little bit deeper on, if you have a website, let's talk about selling locally a little bit. Yeah. And tie that in for me on how you can leverage your website, how you leverage locally, and how that kind of works and looks.
There's so many opportunities to sell locally. One that comes to mind, of course, first is like local fairs and vendor events and, farmers markets and stuff like that. But what caught me the other day is somebody on a Facebook group was like, oh, I did this vendor event and I only made $200. Like, she was not happy with it, But so many times I go to these vendor events and the seller is just sitting back in the chair, just like waiting for people to come up and buy something.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck? You got to be a salesperson out there giving samples, showing, explaining, and really selling yourself and your products. People aren't just going to walk up and buy things all the time. That really gets to me.
Yeah, I think there should be if you're doing trade show, there should be like a trade show jail where every time you walk in and you're doing a trade show, everyone has to throw their phone in that jail. Like there's so many times you go to a trade show and you just walk by, and I've literally have eye contact with somebody, and it's almost like you talk through your eyes and they just look up at you, and I look down and I'm like, okay, well, you don't seem interested. Yeah. And she's like, I don't think you're going to be the buyer. And we just walk away. And it's like, sell me. Like, I mean, I might be a buyer. You don't know,
Yeah.
but I think that's it's a negative experience. And then those are the same folks that'll come back and say that trade shows were bad. But hey, you got to go out there. Like you said, you got to put yourself out there. You got to
Now,
sell.
I'm not saying that the lady that I saw was not doing that or doing that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But the next point I wanted to make was these vendor events you go to is not always about what you make at that event. It can also be about lead generation.
Say it loud.
And meeting people and adding to your list to retarget them later and build that community in your local area.
So I think yes, I think that's so big. It's so important to know that if you go to a dead event, treat it like a lead gen. If you're at a really, really, really high traffic event, still treat it like lead gen, right? It's very important to get those leads. And again, if you're retired, if you're not concerned about sales and scaling, this might not apply to you, which is fine. But for a lot of our customers, like they do want to scale and they want to do better. And I think out of anything, I would say, yes, sales is important, but lead gen is as important because that is the future of the business. The sale is today, but the lead gen is, for tomorrow.
And somebody might say, well, how do you do that? How do you lead gen at a live event?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a few things that come to my mind would be, you see people put their business cards in a fishbowl and having a giveaway.
Mm-hmm.
You could also have a QR code and a sign that says, hey, scan this for the opportunity to win something. Or what about like the spin a wheel? It's like, oh, like put your email down here or put it in my iPad and get a chance to spin the wheel to win something fun. I don't know if you have any other ideas, but those are a few that come to my mind.
Yeah, just off the top of my head, I would just say that do something digital, have it connected to your website, and take those leads through your website, right? And there's a lot of digital games that go on now, but I think you touched on a lot of them, and do fun things like we always do. When we go to trade shows, for example, we always do make and takes, right? Yeah. And when someone does a make and take, we're like kind of giving our secrets away. No, when we do make and takes, they pay, and we collect their email, right? And now we have a lot of data. We know that, hey, what their name is, what their email address is. We know what craft they did. So we know that, hey, they're interested in, UV resin. They're interested in this. Yeah. There's a lot of people that do all the crafts. And now we have so much more data on them. So data is important. And
that's true too. I like when you mentioned that, like also taking note of what you spoke about with that person, because you're going to meet so many people in that day and you're going to forget what they were interested in or what you spoke about. So putting down like their interest to follow up on them is key, and then actually following up is the next key.
Yeah,
you have to follow up.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do a shameless plug here. When you have these leads, right? I think one of the greatest things that MakerFlow offers for your leads is our sell sheets, right? And it's a great way for you to go out there, especially if your leads are businesses, to use those free sell sheets that live in our wholesale section of our website and to start targeting these customers. I think one of the best stories I've heard is Tim, and he was out at a trade show and he was out there with an F1, and there was a business at that show that just came over and he was like, hey, you're making these cutting boards. I have my logo. Can you put the logo on the cutting board? He made one, and the guy that day on the spot, I think bought 20 or 30 more.
Wow.
I was like, that's incredible. That's so crazy, right?
You never know.
And and then that turned into a relationship that he followed up with later on. And now that we have the sell sheets, I mean, it's so easy to just mock up a logo and send them the sell sheet, and boom, it sells for you, right?
Well, didn't you have a customer email you the other day how happy she was with the sell sheets? What was she doing with them?
Yeah, so that was incredible. She actually emailed me back today, and I got more data. She said that she took our sell sheets and she emailed the lead list that she had and sent out 25 emails. She ended up having a conversion rate of 12%.
Just on cold emails.
Wow. Yeah, and that's incredible because on our website, we have a 1.5 to 2% conversion rate. Mm-hmm. If you go on the back end of your Etsy, you could see the conversion rate. She had a 12% conversion rate, and that's not even what she was excited about. She said that I got a 12% conversion rate and I have 3 to 4, like we're looking into it. So that 12% can turn into a 25%.
Wow. And it didn't really cost you much.
It didn't. It just mostly just your time. And you can give that to a VA to do. right?
Oh,
That's where it becomes, now you're leveraging, right? Now you're working smart.
yeah.
All you have to literally do, and you can literally have your VA also email, but I wouldn't recommend that to keep it personal. But then all you have to do is just spend an hour just emailing, these emails, and all of a sudden you've literally created a funnel for yourself.
Yeah.
But the more incredible thing that she told me was that she's not stopping there. She's not taking no for a no. I think a lot of times.
What's next?
Well, she was saying that she has a follow-up calendar, and everyone that said later or no, she's going to follow up in 30 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about, did you talk to her about doing any sales samples or like real of the physical product?
So I know that she had mentioned that she would do that later on in her funnel. Like she'll eventually go down and she'll take something. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about sales samples, and how you can work that into your business.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of work, but I think the wow factor is totally worth it.
Yeah.
So the challenging part is maybe getting that logo. Like, you're not just going to reach out to some dentist office and be like, hey, can I get your logo? Like, who are you? What do you want to do with it? So you're going to have to try to find a good quality logo and try to vectorize it yourself or make it into a workable file. But the trick that I've always used is just going on like Fiverr, making relationships with other graphic designers, and getting those done really fast and at an affordable cost. So that's my tip on that. But taking that logo, making a real sample and delivering that sample in person and trying to speak to the business owner and really just let them know that, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. And I'm in your area. If you want to support local businesses, I'd love to work with you. And here's a sample I just made on the house for you.
Yeah. And they're not going to throw it away.
Yeah.
Right. If anything, they're going to personally use it. And if not today, maybe tomorrow they end up converting.
Yeah.
Right. But I think there's a bigger lesson. The reason I love the sales samples, right, is I think a lot of people take that no and they might pout and kind of be like, oh man, I got 10 no's.
Yeah.
Right. But I think the way you look at that is no. Now 10 people know you exist locally.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's just a matter of them seeing some customized thing somewhere else. And they're like, wow, this is a great idea. Chances are that those 10 people, maybe 2 or 3 people reach out to you and say, hey, you gave me that tumbler you were personalizing, but can you instead make me these bags? And you just never know how it might convert. You just have to have that conversation. You got to keep it warm, keep your leads warm, show up in places where, email, face-to-face again, don't stalk them, but there's better ways of doing it, but definitely, keep, like what we like to say, keep the lead warm. And sometimes with some folks, it takes a lot of touches before they convert.
Yeah. You really got to put your sales hat on, and you really got to learn how to sell. And, good salespeople, they sell features, right? Better salespeople, they sell like outcomes or benefits of those features. But the best salespeople sell emotions.
That's right.
Right? What does McDonald's sell?
Happiness.
The freaking Happy Meal.
In a
Didn't
box.
you say the other day the kid you're with wanted to go to McDonald's for the dang Happy Meal?
Yeah, I think he was still like 8 years old or something like that. And I'm like, hey, you can get more chicken nuggets if I just get you the 10-piece. And he's like, no, I want the Happy Meal. I'm like, you get 6 chicken nuggets and a toy you're going to use for 30 seconds, And he's like, no, I want the box. I want the Happy Meal. And it was just purely illogical to me, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Apple sells like status, I got the latest, and greatest technology, and this is a status, that I have this in my pocket.
It's funny you bring up Apple. I think there's so many times we're in different cities and different places, and a lot of people come up to, me or you or just generally talking, and they say that, hey, my area can't afford this, or they won't pay for it. And I always want to I've never asked this to anybody, but I always want to just go up to them and be like, hey, does anybody in that area have an iPhone or a Samsung? Because if they do, they can afford it. They just don't see the value you're servicing. Yeah. Just think about that. If somebody with an iPhone comes to your booth and takes a picture of your product and says, oh, I can find it cheaper on Amazon. You're selling on price and they're thinking price.
Yeah.
So change their mindset to think on value.
Yeah.
Change their mindset to think on your USPs.
Value and emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't sell on price because they will be fixated on price.
Yeah. I mean, think of the car industry. If the car salesman's like, oh, it's got the window tint and it has these 20-inch rims and blah, blah, blah. And the price is only $20,000. No, sell them the emotions of hey, if you have this SUV, you and your family are going to be able to go on road trips and have a great time. Your kids are going to love it being in the outdoors. And yeah, the tent's going to keep you cool inside, but just think about all the fun times you're going to have.
Yeah.
Just totally change the mindset from selling features and a low price to like, I didn't even mention the price over here and the emotions. I'm already wanting to buy it based on that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think all these examples are around us, but sometimes when you get in business, you get so caught up with numbers that you forget that, you know, you are not in this to sell something at the lowest price.
Yeah. Man, we gotta do it.
This is a whole other podcast.
There's so much. I know we're running behind and stuff, and we should probably start wrapping it up. But I do just briefly want to touch on. I want to mention somebody who's been talking a lot about this, and just to wrap up the local stuff.
Yeah.
Sumita over at Homebound has talked a lot about getting into B&I groups, also joining chambers of commerce. And I love the fact when she said, go to ribbon cuttings.
Yeah.
Like put yourself out there and meet people and create that community and let people know who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
And that's going to build your brand and your business from the bottom up.
Yeah. Great shout out. If you don't know Sumita, again, at Homebound, make sure to follow her. She does, wholesale classes, and she talks a lot about business and growing your business, and she's a great resource. So, but I agree with you. The ribbon cutting thing that's phenomenal. Like
such a
they're all
emotional
businesses,
joy.
supporting businesses.
Yeah.
Like it's perfect place for you to go network, So cool. So let's, I have these 3 things written down, and let's talk, let's split it. I want you to talk about, let's bring it all together. All right. If you're just starting out, right, you're a newbie, you just got your laser, you just got your UV printer, you just got your Cricut, whatever it is, tell me what you would recommend that person to do as far as marketplaces and website and how to start.
So website, I'm recommending Shopify. And like I said, just get a landing page, get your information, show your brand, have your brand colors, your logos spot on, show your face, have a video on there. Okay, that's the website. Social media, you better start it now. It's better sooner than later when it comes to social media.
Yeah.
Right? Once again, show your face. That profile image better not be just XYZ engraving company, like your logo. No, I want to see your picture. I want to see who I'm doing business with and who's behind the scenes, right? You've also got a limited amount of lines on your social media profiles to really say and let your followers know what you stand for. You only have a few seconds from that person to really click and follow you or not.
Yeah.
So you better tell them like who I am, what I stand for, and what kind of content they're going to see on their profile. And then you also got to give some validations in there. Like I've got, I'm trusted by 100 local businesses, 5-star reviews, or as seen on, 3TV or whatever. You got some credibility, put that in your profile too. Get your social medias going. And then dabble in some marketplaces. Etsy's an easy one. It's a low, bearing fees on the sales.
Yeah.
And start with Etsy, and maybe try some live selling on TikTok or some of these other platforms. But that's how I would kind of mix and intertwine some of those.
So you're saying that definitely have a website, start something simple, just so you have the presence. So let's say, like, for example, I think Sumita was kind of saying this, but if somebody does pick you as a brand to go, like, you have a landing page to be like, hey, I am legit.
Yeah.
It's kind of like trying to go out somewhere and saying that, hey, I'm going to go buy this, oven from somewhere at some back alley place that you don't know there's a building or not. You want to make sure your building is there set up and it looks nice and it represents you as a brand.
Yep.
So great. It's and everything you're saying, you should be able to do yourself. Starting Etsy, you should be able to do yourself. Starting a simple Shopify, you should be able to do yourself. And then kind of start locally. Tell me a little bit about what you would do if you're trying to scale and you have a little bit of Etsy, you have a little bit of maybe you've dabbled in Amazon, other marketplaces, and you have a website. How would you go about sort of scaling all that?
In terms of like you're just getting more sales?
Yeah, like for example, on Shopify, would you focus on SEO at that point? Like, let's say if you're getting cross-channel, if you're getting 50, 60 sales a day.
So once you think you've made it on one marketplace, you better think again, because like you said, as quick as it can go up, as quick as it can come down. So as soon as you think you've made it, you better start looking for the next marketplace is what I would say. So if you think you've got a good handle on Etsy, you get some sales going, okay, what's next?
Gotcha.
Okay, Amazon Handmade, maybe that's next. One we didn't even touch on but deserves a mention is Fair. That's a great B2B wholesale option to sell to local, well, I guess not local, but global businesses as well. On Fair, you can set the minimums and get wholesale orders for people to have stores and stuff. So Fair's a good one. So start looking at that. Maybe Walmart Marketplace, maybe Michael's Marketplace. They have a handmade section on Michael's now too.
Yeah.
So there's all these marketplaces coming up. So I would just keep your eyes out there and just keep growing steadily as you grow your team and your.
Yeah, after thinking about it, I would say that, like, adding to what you're saying, as you're doing that, as you're scaling, make sure you're scaling your team as well, and you have professionals that are coming in there, agencies that are coming in there, and really helping you scale, because it does get overwhelming. Well, I think this has been a pretty chaotic podcast, but I think what it all comes down to is you need to slowly start in a couple of places and start expanding your reach as you go out. But the main thing that I do want to say is that whatever you do, right? Like, my advice, I don't know, you can disagree with this, is at the end of the day, you need to be collecting your own information and growing your own brand. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
Yeah, it amazes me when so many businesses don't even collect the emails or even a phone number. That works too, because you could do SMS in conjunction with email. One or the other is great. Like that is a gold mine. If you have people, you've already worked so hard to get that customer in the door, to get the information, to get them to purchase. It's so much easier to send them an email and get them back again. And the cost to acquire that again is so much more less than the first time.
Yeah.
So don't forget about that.
Yeah. No, that you're absolutely right. I think there's too many things we touched on, and we could venture off in so many different topics, but absolutely. So keep brand in mind, and make sure that you don't drive yourself 6 feet under by trying to be everywhere, right? Make sure you're hiring the help. And if you think and if you feel you can't hire the help, then look inwards and make sure you're charging the right amount, making the right margin. That way you can scale and grow, right?
And nowadays, you need to optimize everything for mobile. 75% of all purchases are done on the dang phone.
Yeah. Not
so much the desktop anymore. So make sure when you're doing your website, you're doing all this optimization on your marketplaces, you're on your phone actually checking what your stuff looks like. If you're looking what it looks like on the desktop, it's going to be a completely different experience than what it is on the phone.
Yeah.
So you might build it out on the computer, but make sure you go on your phone and be like, okay, that's how that looked when I put that in there and stuff. Maybe you might need to resize things or move things around. So make sure it's mobile optimized when you're building your brand and everything.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much.
There's a lot.
There's so much. Yeah.
So we've gone way over time.
Can we go like 1 or 2 hours more?
We have questions.
We have questions. Okay.
Right, so
we're being cut off. That's what that means. Yeah. What questions do we have?
Okay, so first question from Charlotte. What's a variant on Etsy?
So a variant is basically, let's say you have a tumbler, right? Maybe you have multiple sizes of tumblers. You've got a 20 ounce, a 30 ounce, and a 12 ounce. Those three options, that's one variant. And then maybe with those three sizes, you've got different colors. So there's another variant. So you need to select the size of the tumbler and then the color of the tumbler, and those are your two variants.
Yeah, I think in more simplistic forms, there's options.
Yeah.
All the options are like all your variants.
Yep.
Or sometimes on websites, variants are like, how many variants? Wouldn't say two. Like I was saying, Etsy only gives you two options for you to add options within it. Does that make sense?
So on Etsy, what I've seen people do is like they'll combine those two I just mentioned into one. So it'll be 20 ounce black, 20 ounce blue, and that saves that second variant for maybe a design option or some other aspect of their listing.
Yeah. So in simplicity form, just means options. Yeah.
And then someone asked, what is POD?
POD is print on demand. So that's basically businesses that you go to and they will print the product for you and they will actually drop ship it to your customers. You are just gathering the sale, taking care of the customer service, and that company, that POD company, will do the fulfillment for you and everything.
Right. So it's almost like, let's say if you just want to work on building your brand, you would just hire, hypothetically, let's say Mark to engrave everything for you, and you make the Etsy shop. You manage it as your own brand. As the sale comes in onto Etsy shop, Mark somewhere, in Arizona is making it and sending it as you. And so he's basically printing it on demand, and you're sort of the face, and he just does it. And if you're a print on demand person, which is a huge issue on Etsy, a print on demand company can be doing this for hundreds of Etsy accounts. So that's been kind of a huge problem on Etsy. Yeah. So because it's actually not being handmade, it's being kind of made in a huge facility that's fulfilling. And print on demand did get a problem because they were actually doing it straight from China, but now that's gotten harder but there is a lot of print on demand businesses in the US now that support Etsy sellers.
Awesome. And both of those questions were from Charla, who asked them at the very first 10 minutes of the podcast. She's still on right now, and she said, got it, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
So shout out to Charla. Next one is from Mary. She said she can sell. Her issue is the paperwork, just getting the business started. What would be your advice for that?
Hey, that's a good future podcast, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's like LegalZoom, to register an LLC, getting with a CPA, and just understanding what they recommend to do. As a former banker, you could never really tell them what to do. You always had to I think you should do this, go check this out. But do you want to be a sole proprietor? Do you want to have it under an LLC? You got to get an EIN number. Use ChatGPT. It'll really walk you through it nowadays too, and how to step by step register those documents.
Yeah. So I'll state it this way.
Okay.
This is what we did. So we basically, whenever and if we were starting a business, and if we were to do it today, Mark and I would definitely, form a LLC, right? And we would make sure we're incorporated so we're protected. However, we would probably start on marketplaces and everywhere else before we even got the LLC paperwork, unless the marketplace asks you to submit the LLC paperwork in order for you to have a shop on there. So in most cases, like on Etsy and stuff, if you're just starting off, they'll let you start off because there's a lot of sellers that don't meet the requirement to kind of have the LLC paperwork. But you don't have to wait for the LLC paperwork in most cases on most marketplaces to get started. And if I'm wrong, someone can prove me wrong, but usually like on Etsy and stuff, you can just get started and don't feel like you have to wait for the LLC paperwork to get started. So you can get a little bit of a head start. That's what we would do.
Awesome. And then Mary, who asked that question, is still on. She says, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Last question we have for you guys was from Mark, and he wants to know, what is fair or fair? He spelled it both ways.
Fair. It's FAIRE, and fair is it's a B2B marketplace. So only businesses that get approved get onto Fair, and then they get access to all the wholesalers, all the sellers. It's basically an online trade show. I like to think of it.
Yeah.
Rather than going to a big, massive trade show in Vegas,
yeah,
you just go on Fair as maybe you own a gift shop, up in the mountains, and you're looking for new products. You can go on Fair and find different vendors, and they'll have minimums. So they have minimums like you have to spend maybe $100 minimum, or you have to buy a certain amount of quantity. So they're not just one-offs; they're actually at scale, wholesale orders.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a great platform because there's a lot of people who have personalization businesses that want to hit up businesses, right? And Fair really connects you to other businesses around the country. And the way you set up your listings is you basically are wholesaling to these businesses, and it gives you the opportunity to get into the businesses. So it's a pretty cool platform.
Now, this is gonna be a gut punch. Do you know what the Fair seller fee is?
It's probably the most expensive.
So the first order that you get from that person on Fair is 25%. And oh yeah, these are wholesale orders, so your margins are already small.
Yeah.
On reorders from those vendors, they're at 15%, so in line with Amazon. But to get that first order is a big expense. But the idea is that they're larger orders, they come back and it's repeat. When you acquire one of those, hopefully they're coming back every quarter, every season, and they're just re up on the stock because they need to replenish their store as well.
Yeah, and the major USP of Fair, and I swear this is my last comment here, the major USP of Fair, if you are interested in Fair, is that Fair offers its wholesale buyers, right, net 60 terms. However, if you're the seller, meaning you, the one that owns the personalization business, it pays you upfront. So Fair basically it's kind of like the transactional facility. You can call it a bank. And that's why a lot of wholesalers, or even a lot of personalized business, a lot of people that own personalized businesses, they like to go to Fair to order from us because they get that next 60 terms.
Well,
right?
We forgot to mention Fair also sometimes will pay for the shipping cost if you have an insider member as well. You don't have to pay shipping if you buy on Fair.
So there's a lot of advantages, but Fair might be one of those places that does require your status to be a LLC and a few other things. And there is an approval process and a long wait list, but if you do get on there, it's a great opportunity for you to kind of expand your marketplaces. And I also feel like Fair is not, I said last comment, I'm sorry. I also feel like Fair is not as intense as Amazon or even Etsy. Once you can sort of kind of set it and forget it there, and the kind of orders kind of just come in.
What's nice with Fair is you can actually set what the MSRP is that you think that retail stores should sell it for. So it gives them an idea of the margins, and typically it's about 50% like of what they see online.
Yeah. So like in saying that, okay, I swear last comment. In saying that, Etsy, Amazon, and just give Fair a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What other questions we got?
That's it. You guys rocked those questions and did a great job. Everybody's appreciative.
Awesome. So thank you everybody for checking out episode 2 here, Making with Purpose here with Mark and John at MakerFlow. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment what you thought about this. Let us know what you want to hear next. Be sure to check us out. We're on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to follow us and check